welcome back to Funeral DNA, the podcast that analyzes the unique components, trends, and innovations that make up the funeral industry. I'm Mike Davis.
And I'm Ashley Solomon.
And today we're speaking with Claire O'Berry from Dying Your Way. Thank you, Claire, for coming on this morning.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for asking me.
So Claire, can you just give us a little brief history about yourself and how long have you been in the death care industry?
Well, it wasn't something I planned, I can tell you that. I was actually an actress for many years of my life, and then I went into nonprofit management and did that for quite a while. About 2005, my parents, both of them who were divorced, but both of them about the same time started having health issues. And so I spent from 2005 to 2011 basically being their primary caregiver and helped supporting them to die a natural death at home with the help of hospice and palliative care. And it was just a very unique learning on the fly kind of experience. And I, was asked by several people after that to support others who were also going through the same things, to duplicate what I did for them, what I did for my parents, not even knowing that what I was doing was a role or anything formal. And it wasn't until years later, and I've been helping people for several years doing this, that I heard the word doula. And I realized that's what I've been doing all along. Wanting to know what I didn't know, I found a great mentor in Austin, Texas, Deanna Cochran. And she's a hospice nurse for decades who's turned into, really being a leading voice in the death positivity movement and doing everything that we can to support people when they're dying to have as good a death as possible through early preparation. So I got excellent training. I got certified. I got involved with the National End of Life Doula Alliance, and met a lot of other really talented people that are involved in this work. And one thing just led to another, and it really is it's an ancient role. I mean, there's always someone at the deathbed that is supporting people that are dying, but it's sort of an art that's been lost. And in reclaiming death back into the community from taking it out of an over-medicalized, hospitalized medical facility event, what I do and what other doulas do are really supporting families to be more involved in the death of their loved ones, and for the patients themselves to take responsibility to be empowered at the end of their life.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a beautiful way to, I guess, begin. Would you be able to explain what death literacy is and why it's so important? Like, you sort of already delved into that, but like the actual definition of death literacy?
Well, I would say it's just being knowledgeable about what happens at the end of life. I mean, I think all of us could talk about, the things that we need to know when a baby's born, and mothers and fathers too now go through a lot of training and Lamaze classes and things to prepare for that joyful event. And this is just really the reverse side of that, because it's something that everyone will experience, but no one relishes the idea of contemplating their end of life. And statistically, 79% of us are going to die from a chronic progressive illness. Only 21% of us are going to die from a sudden unexpected death. And I would argue that both scenarios, people are supported if there's planning that's done ahead. But for those people that are going through a slow progressive illness, it just makes such a difference if there is knowledge, a knowledge base of not only your disease progression and your prognosis, but there are a lot of similarities to all chronic progressive illness and how the actual act of dying happens, that if people were aware of it, they would prepare in advance and use mitigation strategies that are available that most people don't know about, or if they don't know, or they're not empowered to ask about it. So it's just becoming knowledgeable about the end of life.
That's a wonderful definition. Do you think you'd mentioned sort of some pre-planning, and that would include in my mind creating that knowledge base? Do you think it's a conversation for an individual to have, or do you think that's an important conversation to include your family in as well?
Well, I'll just start by saying it's not one conversation. I mean, it's not just one conversation that's done and dusted and, oh, I've taken care of that. I've had the conversation. It is a conversation that needs to happen frequently and often, and it needs to happen with your doctor, certainly. It needs to happen with your close family members, certainly. But in Dying Your Way, we really encourage people to identify and assign roles in a team. So that would be your medical power of attorney, your primary caregiver, your power of attorney, your executor or executrix, your all of the physicians that you work with, your hospice team, your palliative care team, your occupational therapist. It could be your housekeeper. I mean, it's going to be different team members for different people, but you need to get an end of life plan that you sort out with informed information and create your own end of life plan, and then share that with many and often.
So you just brought up your company, Dying Your Way. How did your company get started, and when did you guys begin?
Well, oddly enough, it happened. I meditate regularly, but I was meditating, and this was in the forefront of my mind. And I think the genesis of it, just sort of what is the main thing that's part of Dying Your Way, is the Portal program, which takes people through everything from diagnosis to the end of life and things that need to be put into place. And I would meditate, and this stuff would just pour out of me. And I wrote it over maybe a year and a half. And my husband and I were doing a lot of traveling between Australia and the United States. And I was trying to support people that were dying at different stages. And I was doing it all by email or Skype or, phone calls. And it just really made sense to develop a website and develop it so it was accessible 24/7 online, sort of like an evergreen approach. I didn't even know what that was at the time. And honestly, it was all done and ready and launched by the time COVID-19 struck. So it put us in a fortunate position, unfortunately, that we already had the business model, and we had the structure in place to support people, during that time. So, and it's really because of COVID-19, because of the acceptance now of telemedicine, which really didn't get off and running as a concept, except because of COVID-19. That's one of the silver linings. It's everybody that I work with, it's online primarily. I mean, a few local people, but mostly, they're calling from British Columbia, they're calling from the UK, they're calling from, Sydney. They're literally all over the world, that are in different needs and stages. Yeah.
Okay, well, I was gonna ask you that, how far your reach was, but I guess because you put it on, you're on the internet, then you're sort of at a global reach, and you offer your services all over the world then?
Yeah, 24/7. And I have other certified end of life doulas who I have vetted, and I mean, I've worked with them closely over the years. and they are exceptional doulas themselves. And so the goal, I'm not quite there yet, is I want to have a certified doula in every time zone globally. So, I mean, right now we are meeting the need of 24/7, but, you know, it's pretty much Western countries, you know, so I've got the North America covered. I've got Australia, New Zealand covered, anybody that are in those time zones. But yeah, I see this getting larger because the needs getting greater, baby boomers and all.
Yeah, I have followed that in history, and there's always tends to be a big need that precedes and just follows the baby boomers, and right, they're starting to hit this need at the end of their life. They're looking at planning and preparing for these things. So obviously you offer a lot of services, and I think that there's probably more to the end of life services that you do offer that people wouldn't be aware of. But when clients are reaching out to you, what is what's their main concern when they're first reaching out to you? What are they looking for you to take care of?
You know, it's surprisingly varied. You know, one person may just want to be sure that his family knows to bury him by his horse. Another person, really wants to prepare her home. So, she's a single adult with no children, and she wants to stay at home as long as she can. So we've done a lot to focus on preparing her home. Some people are, just really in a lot of fear, and they need they need some sort of therapeutic support because of the fear and the anger that they're going through. And what we do is that I'm not a lawyer. I'm not. It's not a medical role. It's not a legal role. I'm not a psychiatrist. But what my role is to find the resources that are useful for them and put that in place. And where I am, and we have a large resource center on the website, so a lot of that's already there. And I also find that a lot of people are, they will utilize a doula, but they also like the idea of DIY. And so the portal program's also set up so people can just go on the website and go to at their own pace in their own way and have their own aha moments. Yeah.
Well, I think you sort of explained what it means to be an end-of-life doula, but you had briefly mentioned that this is a role that has been throughout history and one that we sort of recently lost touch with. Would you mind sort of explaining how you think that role is adapted? So like from historically until now and what you're currently able to do and provide, especially with it all being online?
Well, sadly, I mean, most of us have not actually been in the room with someone when they have passed away. And so the awareness of the sacredness of that moment and the emotional tenderness of that moment, it's lost on people, and they tend to view death through the lens of the news or through crime dramas or through gaming or something that is, they think that's what death is, and it's not quite that dramatic. And, I mean, I've seen really good deaths and I've seen really bad deaths, but it's something that if you've seen it, what to expect, what's appropriate in the room, in the moment, at the time. And I think it was a natural skill because, in 100 years ago or more, people were just in that environment. It was part of life. And nowadays, it's more likely that you're going to die in a medical facility. Most people do, or a nursing home. And the family are likely not to be there. 20% of adults don't have children. 24% of adults are estranged from their children. So right there, that's 50% almost of adults that are going to likely be alone and relying on just medical professionals that may or may not be trained in end of death care. Doulas are trained in end of death care. And someone will be there, but they may not be trained. If they're family members, they may be emotionally and physically exhausted. And that's why it's just really good to have a doula who is sort of a third party that can support the dying person, but support the family as well in an unbiased way, but really supporting the end of life for that person who's passing away.
That makes a lot of sense. So thank you for explaining that. So you'd mentioned that the website has a whole host of resources that are available to them. Would you mind giving a little summary on what some of those resources could be? Just sort of a...
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much in categories, and I try to be as global as possible, but there's a lot on advanced care planning. There's a lot on aged care. There's a lot on funeral resources. There's a lot of people are really, that I'm working with are very interested in green burials and home burials and, oh gosh, a lot of things that have to do around the fear of dying. You know, there's a lot of wonderful research that's been done. An oncologist in Switzerland, Monica Rentz, has written about 4 groups of people that consistently have a good death, what I call good death being pain and anxiety free, or relatively pain and anxiety free. And those people are people that have had a near-death awareness, people that have had a near-death experience, and I can explain the difference in a little bit if you want me to, but near-death awareness, near-death experience, and people that have a faith in life after death. Those people are, 80% of them tend to have a good death. There's a 4th group that's really interesting, and it's people that are curious about death, people that are comfortable talking about death, people that are go to seminars about death, people that, you know, death over dinner, death cafes, people that are just curious talking about it are have an 80% more probability of having a positive death. So I try to find real scientific research that people can read and get information from that puts death more in perspective. So yeah, I mean, that's just sort of a broad brush strokes about what it is. And oddly enough, a lot of millennials are very fascinated with death, which is surprising that a lot of people that come to the Dying Your Way Death Cafe or where places that I speak and everything, the people that are most engaged are millennials.
Well, maybe it has to do with having the internet usually very accessible. So there's questions, and if there's one thing that millennials can't get answered, then of course they've got to hunt for those answers.
Exactly, yeah.
So you had mentioned that you wrote a book. Where is that accessible? Would that be on your website as well?
Well, what I wrote is, I call it the Dying Your Way Portal Program.
Okay.
And it is something that is, it's a curriculum, really. I guess, if anything, if I was going to call it, I never thought of, I mean, I do have it in a book form, but I don't have it published. I just have it online, the Dying Your Way website. But yeah, I mean, that's the center of the program that we provide. And that's what really is where people are going to get the most benefit. But we also have, you know, again, services for doulas that people can get a 30-minute free consultation. And, you know, if they want a package of, you know, buy a package of, you know, working with an end of life doula, that's helpful too.
Well, I think it was clear after, talking with you here, that the more that families and individuals talk about death, the more that, we make an accepted topic in our lives, in our day to day, and we're planning for that. It clearly makes you a little bit more comfortable when you're reaching that stage of your life. And we are all going to reach that stage of our life sometimes. So you're right, bringing it up and talking about it might be the best way to go. But if you had to leave the audience with one note about death literacy or dying your way, what would that be?
I think when you're with your loved ones, just really find an opening and an opportunity to bring it up. And sometimes, younger people can talk to grandparents where it's harder for the children of the grandparents to talk to them, but younger people really have an openness and an honesty and a willingness and a curiosity that it is a great starting point. I think if I was going to say anything, it's just have conversations with your loved ones. And do check out the dyingyourway.com website. There's just so much information there that, we haven't even touched on. But I think if you want to learn about death before you need to know about it. Because when you're in the thick of it, when you're in the chaos of it, it's never too late to get support from a doula. It's never too late to learn about death literacy. But when people are emotionally distraught and fearful, it's harder. So I would just encourage everybody to get the information before they need it. Just like you get an insurance policy before you need it. I would just suggest that this is more important than an insurance policy when you think about taking your last breaths. It's just really the most exquisite time of your life. It is.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Claire, and sharing with us. We really do appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
And to everyone at home, thank you for listening to Funeral DNA, our podcast that analyzes the unique components, trends, and innovations that make up the funeral industry. Stay tuned for next week's episode when we unveil a different topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.